Alright, let's look at how to factor using Bergman technique. So the first example is y equals x squared minus 8x minus 20. This Bergman technique idea is you're looking for what multiplies to this thing, negative 20, and adds to this thing. The multiplying thing is always the constant term. The adding thing is always the coefficient of x. So we're trying to multiply to negative 20 and add to negative 8. And we're going to find what those two numbers are. That's why I call it Bergman technique, is just to remember the MAN. Some students just call it MAN, that's fine. And so I want to multiply to negative 20, add to negative 8. So some of you can do that in your head, maybe some of you already have it, but if you don't, I would list out what multiplies to 20. 1 times 20 multiplies to 20, or 2 times 10. You can even use a calculator to check. Does 3 go into 20? No. Does 4? Yeah, 4 times 5 is 20. And that's it. There are no other combinations that multiply to 20. There's one other piece of information you can use, which is since you multiply to a negative number, one of these pairs has to be negative. It can't be a plus and a plus, because then it would multiply to a positive, and it can't be minus minus, or it would multiply to a positive. So you got to make one number negative. So all that's left to figure out is where do you put one minus and one plus in one of these pairs so that you add to negative 8. Can you make a minus and a plus 1 and 20 add to negative 8? No. But you can with 2 and 10. That's your answer. So where do you put the minus so that you multiply to negative 20 and add to negative 8? You put it here on the minus 10. You don't have to show this work, but you do have to show the MAN, which is to multiply to negative 20 and add to negative 8, I have negative 10 and 2, or 2 and negative 10. So your answer is y equals x plus 2 times x minus 10, or x minus 10, x plus 2. It doesn't matter which order you write them in, as long as the sign is on the right thing, in this case negative 10. You can even check, look, here's why factoring works. Let's expand this. Y equals x plus 2 times x minus 10. You can watch the video on how to use FOIL. If you don't know this, I'm expanding by doing first times first, and then outside times outside, that's negative 10x, inside times inside, last times last, and then simplify, get x squared minus 8x minus 20. So we know we're right. So that one's done. We're going to use Bergman technique again on the second method, but before we do, I always try and remind my students to common factor first. Here there were no common factors. Nothing goes into the 1 on x squared. 1 is not a common factor. It doesn't change anything. But here, notice they're all divisible by 2. So my first move is going to be common factor out the 2. It's just going to stay up front for the rest of the time. And I'm going to divide each term by 2. I get x squared minus 13x plus 30. So leave that 2 out in front, but now you're trying to multiply and add, same as before, but that 2 just stays in front, and we're looking at these things. So this is your multiply thing, this is your add thing. Trying to multiply to 30 and add to negative 13. Notice I put the MAN on the side. Your work should follow right underneath. This can be on a box, but it's clearly on the side or distinct from my main steps. Alright, what multiplies to 30 and adds to negative 13? If you don't see it right away, list what multiplies to 30. 1 and 30, 2 and 15. Does 3 work? Yep, 3 times 10. Does 4 work? No, 4 doesn't go into 30, but 5 does. 5 times 6 makes 30. That's it. Those are all the possibilities. But there's another piece of information, which is if you're multiplying to a positive but adding to a negative, is it a plus plus, plus minus, or a minus minus? Well, it can't be a plus minus because plus minus wouldn't multiply to positive. So it's got to be either a plus plus or a minus minus. Until you look at this add thing and realize if you multiply to a positive, it's got to be one of these two. But if you also add to a negative, it can't be plus plus. It's got to be a minus and a minus. So now all you have to do is figure out from these 4 pairs which one can you put 2 minuses on so that they multiply to negative 30, but also add to negative 13. And the answer, of course, is this one, minus 3 times minus 10. That's the only one that multiplies to positive 30 and adds to negative 13. So those are our numbers. Let's put that in, negative 3 and negative 10, so it's 2 times x minus 3 times x minus 10. And we're done. You can check it if you want, just like we did before. Again, you can watch the video on foiling. I'm going to write down my answer and just check if I'll leave this 2 out in front and I'll do FOIL again. X times x is x squared. X times negative 10 is negative 10x. Negative 3 times x is negative 3x. And negative 3 times negative 10 is positive 30. So you get y equals 2. Let's simplify in the brackets. X squared stays. Minus 10 minus 3 is minus 13x plus 30. And now finally share that 2, distribute it into the brackets. 2 times x squared, 2 times minus 13, and 2 times 30. This is the kind of check you do if you have time on a test. And sure enough, we got the question back, which means pretty sure our answer is right. So you've learned how to factor using Bergman technique, but multiplies to something and adds to something. This is always your multiply term. This is your add term. But don't forget to check if you need to common factor first.